Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we will begin on time. Teachers are always wanting to be on time, so we should start right at 11:30. So welcome everyone to our presentation this morning. My name is Kelly Brayo. I'm a special education inclusion consultant in what we call in the TDSB Learning Center 1, Learning Networks 2 and 3. So I serve 13 schools, sort of in the West End Toronto, from K to grade 12. So welcome to our session. Rosanna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Definitely. Well, good morning. My name is Rosanna Seto. I'm also a special education and inclusion consultant for Learning Center 1, and I'm primarily responsible for the old City of York neighborhood and some schools also in the Etobicoke area. So welcome everyone. We're happy that you're all here, and we hope that this will be an informative session for all of you.
And I'm just checking to make sure that everyone can see my screen. And so Rosanna and I are going to be presenting different parts of the presentation. And we will also be monitoring the chat, so you can put your questions into the chat. And it doesn't look like we have a very large group at this time, so that might give us an opportunity to pause and answer some questions if there's a lot, but certainly we will have a question and answer period at the end. So Rosanna, would you like to take it away?
I'm also just wondering if anyone requires any interpretation today. If you can say so in the chat, then we're happy to accommodate for that and support you with that. As well, Kelly and I can monitor the chat. So if you want to put an X in the chat when you have a question or a comment or just not clear of anything, we're a small group. So as Kelly said, we're happy to have you ask questions as we go along, and then us try to address that. So that'd be fantastic. And it's great, we have some people share. So Samir, you're a teacher. Samir, are you a teacher with TDSB? Oh, fantastic, great. And then Liji, I'm a parent of 2 boys in TDSB, one is MP, and I want to know more about it and how to make the best out of this plan. Yeah, fantastic questions, and you're in the right place. And then Holly, no interpretation necessary. Okay, so I think we're good. Okay, so for the next hour, we'll be together in this session. And we thought that we just wanted to establish some norms for everybody. So this is adapted from a book called Courageous Conversations About Race, a field guide in achieving equity in schools by Glenn Singleton and Curtis Linton. And we really want to have you stay engaged. You may experience a little bit of discomfort. You expect and accept non-closure. So hopefully we will address most of your questions or concerns, but there, you might leave asking more. And we're here to continue to support you along your journey. And we expect us and everyone else to speak our truths. In terms of special education, our title actually said Special Education Inclusion Consultants. We're very much about equity and inclusion, and believe in that all students can learn in our schools, and here to provide support in terms of how our students can learn effectively if we put the right things in place for them to be successful. Okay. I think there was one more in the chat here, 1 second. Okay, Ruth, welcome Ruth as well too, and a 13-year-old daughter, fantastic, right? Okay, so what are our goals for today? So our goals for today are to really unpack and help you understand and also explore the individual education plan. And sometimes within TDSB, you hear acronyms that are used, and sometimes you'll hear it say IEP. IEP, and that stands for the Individual Education Plan. And really, the Individual Education Plan is developed in partnership with you as the parents, the guardians, the caregivers, as well as with the students, and definitely is a collaboration where we are all working together. We also want to view the IEP within the contents of our special education processes. And again, where we're looking at it from an inclusionary, equitable stance. And we also really want to develop what are our students' strengths and really look at where are our students doing really well and where do their strengths lie. And then where can we work to support student achievement and well-being in TDSB in terms of next steps for our students. And our other goal is to look at the tiered approach to support inclusion and the different levels of support within the TDSB. So what is our agenda for today? Well, our agenda for today is we're going to talk a little bit about processes within the Toronto District School Board. We're going to talk a little bit about in-school team meetings, as well as school support team meetings. And sometimes you hear the acronym for that called IST for the in-school team meeting and SST for the school support team meeting. We want to talk a little bit about developing the IEP and what that looks like in terms especially of you as parents, as partners, and the parent consultation part of the individual education plan. We want to explain to you the components of the individual education plan and how that supports students. And then we also want to talk a little bit about the levels of support and how we're tiering the approach within our classrooms within the TDSB on how we can support all students, not just students on individual education plans.
Thank you, Rosanna. Wonderful. So right here we have a ministry document outlining our shared beliefs. And I'm just going to read them out to you because this is what underlies all of our goals for students in our board. So we believe that all students can succeed. Each student has their own unique patterns of learning, strengths, needs, which we also call areas of growth and patterns of readiness. Successful instructional practices are founded on evidence-based research tempered by experience. Teachers assume ownership of all students in their classes, and special education is not a destination. These outline the strategies that are applied consistently over a period of time prior to a student coming forward for discussions. So the majority of student needs can be met within the regular classroom setting. And some of these strategies include the universal design for learning. The universal design for learning, its aim is to assist teachers in applying teaching strategies or pedagogical materials designed to meet the special needs of specific students or groups of students to enhance learning for all students, regardless of age, skills, or situations. Differentiated instruction. This is a method of teaching based on the idea that because students differ significantly in their interests, learning styles, and readiness to learn, it is necessary to adapt instruction to suit these differing characteristics in an environment that is planned and organized to meet the needs of all students. Other strategies include appropriate accommodations, perhaps extra time, a quiet setting, and then also the tiered approach to supporting inclusion. Conferencing with colleagues and in-school support special education staff. And after communicating with parents, guardians, and caregivers, the teacher may refer the student to an in-school team meeting, an IST. Is everyone able to hear me?
I believe so, Kelly.
Wonderful. It's just funny, I can't see any of you anymore when I'm presenting.
I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions with regards to this. So this is what should be happening within all of our classrooms within the Toronto District School Board for all of our students with or without special education needs. I think we're good in the chat there, Kelly. There is no question.
Wonderful. Okay. So this is a great chart to look at, and it sort of explains the process of in-school team meetings and school support team meetings. So as I was already saying, teachers would have tried a lot of different strategies in the classroom, even before they consider going to an in-school team meeting. So like those include like the universal design, differentiated instruction, providing accommodations, and also getting the support from their colleagues just to, you know, have other ideas of how to support their students. But sometimes teachers need some further strategies to discuss, and this is where they would move forward to an IST. And so at that time, when they decide to go to an IST, they would complete an individual learning profile. Just to share with the team, the in-school team, the student's strengths and then next steps. And we will take a look at that template together in some of the subsequent slides. So at the in-school team meeting, the other staff members will provide further strategies for the teacher to try. And the teacher will go back and over a period of time, will utilize some of those ideas to support the student. And sometimes that, that works and the student is starting to progress more and everything's going well. At other times, they find that the progress is still lagging and they continue to have concerns. So that at that point, they may decide to go to a school support team meeting. And this is when the teachers have exhausted the recommendations from IST, which may include a combination of accommodations, modifications, and alternative strategies, which we'll talk about later in the presentation, and requires more expert guidance from the school support team members. And we'll also do an overview of who the members are at the school support team meetings. This approach promotes the ability to identify areas required to build capacity with teachers and support staff to appropriately program to meet specific needs of students. It also interrupts the historical pathway of special education by bringing the student to IST, SST, and then the identification, placement, and review committee, and then placing them in intensive support programs. And it actually puts the focus on the adult adapting to how to best meet the needs of the students. So we're trying to support the building of teacher capacity by utilizing all of the school-based resources to support students. Because again, our belief is that for most students, they will progress and achieve in the regular classroom given the proper supports. Are there any questions in the chat, Rosanna?
I think we're good right now, Kelly.
Wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about the individual learning plan. So the ILP, there we go again with another acronym, is created and reviewed during the consultation with school-based teams called IST and SST, established to assist teachers in meeting a student needs. So this is where all of the strengths, the needs, the strategies tried are documented. And also the recommendations from the meetings are documented in the ILP. At the IST and SST meetings, a more comprehensive examination of the teacher's programming to address the students' needs are carried out and interventions are recommended. The nature and intensity and duration of interventions are based on evidence recorded in the ILP. So the ILP would also include things like updated diagnostic assessments, observations, and based sort of in data that the teacher has collected on their student. So here we go. I hope you can sort of see an outline of the template. At the top here, it just outlines, whether the student had been brought previously to an IST or an SST, or if an individual education plan has already been developed. And it just gives you sort of a record of any previous meetings. The teacher will outline the student's strengths, because we look to do a strength-based approach to supporting students. So the strengths are very important because oftentimes once the student realizes what their strengths are, they use those strengths to support any areas of growth or needs that they have. The teacher will outline the areas of need or areas of growth, and then all of the instructional, environmental, and assessment strategies that have already been implemented. And this helps the team, the in-school team or the school support team members, to know what's already been tried. So at the meeting, they can sort of move on from those strategies that have been tried and provide other ideas. So that's why this document's really important. And then in the next page, we have the recommendations. So there's different recommendations from IST and SST that can be made. At an in-school team meeting, oftentimes the recommendations are, for the teacher to go and try some other strategies in the classroom. Perhaps the resource staff in the school are going to more directly support the teacher in implementing some of the strategies. Whereas at the school support team meetings, there may be a recommendation to have, like a speech and language assessment done, or a psychoeducational assessment done. So there's different recommendations that come out of the different meetings. And then we also record who's responsible, and then the general timelines for those recommendations to be completed. And then we also have some follow-up or outcomes of the recommendations. So really the ILP is a great way to sort of record and just take a look at what's sort of been tried and what types of meetings have been done for the student.
And Kelly, if I can just interject here,
yes.
that this is something that should be being sent home to the families.
Yes.
So if your child is being discussed at an in-school team meeting and an individual learning profile has been created for your child, that this is something that should be sent home, that you're aware of, and that you can be informed of in terms of decisions and next steps. So it really should be a collaboration approach that we're working together.
Thank you, Rosanna. Okay, here we go. So this just outlines the members of the in-school team, IST. So in elementary schools, the IST consists of school-based staff, including the administrator, and then the special education teacher, who we call the MART, the Methods and Resource Teacher. And there may also be an additional resource teacher. And then, of course, the classroom teacher would be a part of that in-school team. In secondary schools, the IST consists of school-based staff. So again, the administrator, the special education teacher is called the CL, the curriculum leader, or the ACL, assistant curriculum leader, which is the equivalent of the MART for elementary. And they have just responsibilities related to the management and delivery of support to students with the IEPs. So for teachers, the MART and the ACL are really the first sort of go-to person to get some ideas for supports, and also around the development of the ILP and the IEP.
And Kelly, if I can just interject there, there was a great question from Danielle in the chat with regards to the individual learning profile, and should that be sent home at the end of the school year? And the answer is no. At all of our schools, we have in-school team meetings on a monthly basis. And we also have school support team meetings on a monthly basis where we're discussing all students within the school, where we feel that there may be areas of growth that we need to address. So once those students are discussed that month, that individual learning profile should be sent home that month. Right after that meeting, actually, with the updates there. And then, for example, so let's say we discussed Jonathan now for October's in-school team meeting. that form should be sent home again. And then if we discuss him again, then in February, for example, we should keep updating that form and then sending it home again with our new recommendations that we made. And there is a new individual learning profile that is created every school year if a child is being presented at the meetings. So good question, Danielle. Thank you.
Yep, very good question. Thank you. Okay, so for the roles of the in-school team, so I'll just read these out. Members collaboratively present and analyze student strengths and needs, areas of growth, problem solve, share in-school expertise, make decisions regarding next steps, which may include initiating an IEP, and then again, document the recommendations and follow up on the individual learning plan. And these all have been discussed already. Okay, so for the members of the school support team, in addition to the school staff that we just talked about for the IST, this team offers additional knowledge, including psychologists, social workers, attendance counselors, speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, parents, guardians, caregivers, and students over 16 years of age. So each school has a school psychologist, a school social worker, and a school speech and language pathologist. And those are sort of the regular members of the school support team. At times, the school may invite occupational therapists and attendance counselors to the meeting as well. When a member of the TDSB's professional support services attends the meeting, we do need parental, and that parental includes caregiver guardian permission, is required if the student is to be discussed by name. And then students over 16 years of age are also encouraged to participate and must be consulted. And then students 18 years of age and older must be invited to attend the SST and give permission for their personal information to be shared with their parents. Any questions there, Rosanna?
Yeah, Kelly, if I can just add on a little bit more, and thank you for sharing all that. I just wanted to let you know that in some of our schools, parents are invited to the school support team meeting, but in some of our other schools, parents are invited to the in-school team meeting, as well as then the school support team meeting. So it does vary differently from school to school and what the practices are for that specific school. So in terms of the in-school team meeting, that is just school-based staff. And that's why permission is not required from the parent in order for us to discuss the child. Whereas in terms of the school support team meeting, people like myself and Kelly that are part of that staff that attend the meeting, we're classroom teachers. So we still belong to the Ontario College of Teachers. So again, like permission isn't required for us. The reason why permission is required is because psychologists, social workers, speech and language pathologists, and occupational therapists, they belong to different colleges, and they are within our board, but then because they're on their own departments within our board that support and not considered classroom teachers, is why we then require permission from families, because they then have their own criteria in terms of confidentiality and what they have access to in terms of students. So for example, if you do not give permission for your child to be discussed at a school support team meeting, a social worker does not have access to a student's Ontario student record, and does not have access, for example, to like a psychologist doesn't have access to that too. So that's why, because there's different levels of then of permission that's required to be there as well too. Okay, just wanted to make that clear. And I think there was one thing in the chat there, Kelly.
Yes.
And yes, Samir makes an excellent point that teachers need to be honest and transparent at each and every aspect. We're not surviving and hiding things from parents to get benefits and positions. IEPs are legal documents, and very much true. And this is why it really is a partnership. When your child is being brought to in-school team meeting, I would hope that there's already been some conversations with regards to the classroom teacher and you as the parent, that there are some fantastic strengths with your child, but then there's areas of need and growth that we're supporting and that we're trying to brainstorm. So really it's us brainstorming together, and not every time are all the services required at the school support team meeting. So even though a social worker might not be there, there might be ideas that a social worker might have, but it doesn't necessarily mean that social work support is going to be offered, for example. Is that clear understanding for everybody? Ellie, I think we're good. Oh, yeah.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
All right. All right, so for the roles of the school support team, similar. Oh, I'm just wondering if everyone can make sure that they're on mute. I believe Holly has her hand raised. Do you want us to pause for a minute so we can answer Holly's question? And then whoever does not have their mute on, if you don't mind muting. Holly, do you have a question? Is it in the chat?
Yeah, Holly was asking that, is the IST meeting considered a level 2 IPRC meeting? And again, thank you, Holly, for your fantastic question. And again, there's some acronyms there. So an in-school team meeting is very, very different from an identification, placement, review committee meeting, which is what the IPRC stands for. An in-school team meeting is more of a brainstorming session in terms of what we need to look at in terms of your child's strengths, your child's area of growth, and what next steps that we should look at implementing for your child in order to have them be successful at school. An identification placement review committee meeting is a totally separate process, and that is for students that have been legally identified within the Toronto District School Board, where then we're doing a review for those students. Is that a bit clearer there, Holly? So for example, if your child has a learning disability, that child would have probably been discussed at an in-school team meeting. We look at strategies, we look at support for your child, what we can do. We might go to a school support team meeting afterwards where we might involve a psychologist to then look at doing an assessment. And then from that assessment, there might be, for example, a learning disability. And that's where then the child could be identified with the learning disability at an IPRC. And then where we would review it would be at the level 2. I hope I haven't confused you there, Holly, and tried to make that a bit clearer. Feel free to unmic, Holly, if you have any further questions. Okay, definitely. Your son has an IEP for many years. Okay, and we can talk about that a little bit more too. And then the role of the school support team meeting and how we can help with that. Okay. The PT, the speech and language is the SLP, and the PT, who do you refer? The physiotherapist? Is that who you're referring to, Holly? Okay, so Holly, perhaps then we can address, physiotherapist. Okay, so we can address that. So not all physiotherapists always attend all the meetings. Sometimes some of our physiotherapists are through the TDSB, and then if they're in an intensive support program, but some of our therapists are through outside agencies. And if they're through outside agencies, they don't necessarily always come to all the meetings as well too. But definitely we can talk about next steps and what that would look like at a school support team meeting. Has a physical.
Yeah, and I think if I could just add to that, sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Even if the physiotherapist is not at the meeting, there'll be all the other members of the SST there, including people like Rosanna and I. So if we hear that there are needs, you know, that a physiotherapist, like we would need to do like a referral to a physiotherapist, either with the board, because there's physiotherapy, like there's OT and PT in the board, and then there's also outside agencies. So it would really depend on the specifics,
Right.
you know, of the student. And then what we would do is we would communicate with the physiotherapist or occupational therapist with all of the information from the meeting and determine whether a referral would be recommended. So they don't
Correct.
always have to be there.
Correct. So in this case, for example, how I see that it says that your son has a physical disability and he is working with a physiotherapist within the TDSB. So a lot of times my recommendation is that we do invite that physiotherapist if they already are involved with the student, since they will have some insight as to providing some more up-to-date information. So we will often do that if they are available to attend. Like I said, we only meet once a month at a certain time frame of the day. So with busy schedules, that's not always possible, but we do try to accommodate that. And we do also try to accommodate sometimes other agencies that might be involved outside of the Toronto District School Board. So for example, if your child is attending Holland Bloorview and having supported Holland Bloorview, sometimes there are representatives from Holland Bloorview that might join the meeting as well too. Sometimes, for example, Children's Aid, if they are involved with the family as well too, and they have a social work caseworker, sometimes they're invited to the meeting as well. So it really is a case-by-case basis in terms of what is required and who would be best there to provide information. So that's definitely something we can talk a little bit more about to see if what the situation was there, Holly, in terms of your son. And then what we can do to look in terms of supporting for next steps. But yeah, definitely a case-by-case situation.
Okay, so I think we'll just continue. And then, I mean, anything that we haven't fully responded to or you have follow-up questions, we can certainly address those at the end of the presentation as well. So just to go back to the school support team, I mean, we've talked mostly about this already, but their role is to review and discuss students who may be having difficulty in school, whether it be academically, socially, or behaviorally. And then just working collaboratively to develop, monitor, and evaluate action plans and strategies to help the student. The recommendations that are listed here are not all in, like there's actually a lot more that could be recommended from SST, but these are some of them. So additional strategies and supports. It might be recommended that we develop an IEP, although development of an IEP could be a recommendation from IST as well. Because the professional services team members are there, like we were just discussing with the physiotherapist, there might be a referral that's recommended for the school psychologist to do a consult with the teacher, or perhaps the student has been to a school support team meeting several times, and it's been decided that at this time a psychoeducational assessment needs to be done to gain more information to support programming, perhaps a social work referral. And then at other times, when a student perhaps has had a psychoeducational assessment done and there's a diagnosis of a learning disability or another, like an intellectual disability, sometimes a referral to the Identification, Placement, and Review Committee is made because at that meeting, two things happen. The student is possibly given an exceptionality, and then a recommendation for placement. Sometimes the placement recommendation is for an intensive support program if the student is significantly behind. So some of those are recommendations that could be from IST, but also from SST. The referral to Identification, Placement, and Review Committee only comes out of SST.
So one of the things to keep in mind is that if one of the recommendations was made for social work support or for speech and language or for psychology, that if we make that referral, there's often a permission form that is sent home for the family, and then you sign that permission form. One thing that I want you to help you understand is that permission form only gives permission for that support services to contact you for further permission. So it doesn't automatically mean, for example, just because you've signed a social work referral, that there's going to be social work support. It doesn't automatically mean that just because you've signed for a psychological assessment, that there's going to be a psychological assessment being done for your child. It just gives permission for that support person to contact you to discuss the process further. And then there'd be another consent form that would be signed for the actual work to begin. So sometimes I recommend that for parents, because it just gives you an opportunity then to meet one-on-one with that support service person so that you can understand the process a little bit more. And I think that's really helpful as well too. So I just wanted to make that clear for families. And then there was a question, Kelly, in the chat from Holly, that as a parent, do I have a right to invite who I think needs to share information about my son? So again, this is a partnership. We're working collaboratively to help support your child. As a classroom teacher, I feel that you are your child's first and foremost teacher. And I also feel that you know your child best. So I definitely, as an administrator, would want to have a conversation with you if you feel that there's someone that has valuable information to share about your child, to have that conversation with the administrator to see if that person can be invited. A lot of times, if the person is outside of the TDSB and not within the Toronto District School Board, we have what's called a two-way consent. So for example, let's say your child is currently involved at Sick Kids, and they are seeing a physiotherapist at Sick Kids. A lot of times what we will do is, with your consent, we will do a two-way release and sign for TDSB for us to have access to speak to that physiotherapist at Sick Kids, and for the Sick Kids physiotherapist to speak to us. And that could be via phone call, that could be via Zoom meetings like today, or that could also be that we invite the person to the school support team meeting. So it can work very differently in different settings, and then what works best. So definitely I would have those conversations with the administration at the school so that collaboratively we can determine who would be best to be invited for the meeting.
Oftentimes, just to add to that, parents do bring, you know, if their child has had a private psychology report completed, sometimes that psychologist will join the school support team meeting. Sometimes parents bring, you know, like a parent representative or a friend just to support them. So that's actually pretty common for parents to have someone there, possibly just to take notes or to ask questions on their behalf. So that is something that's fairly common. But yes, if we want to share information that you have obtained from a private agency, then we would need that two-way consent.
Mm-hmm. And TDSB also always provides interpretation. So if you need an interpreter for the meeting, we can always have an interpreter present. It is a lot of jargon language sometimes that can be difficult for some of our families to understand if English is a second language. So we definitely provide interpreters for them for our meetings, and that can be via phone interpretation, or then we also have people within the Toronto District School Board that speak the language, and then we invite them as well too to help support with interpretation. Okay. There is also Alana, you said you supplied reports from an outside assessment, and yeah, we really appreciate that. That if you have assessments from outside agencies, we really appreciate the collaboration of us sharing, because anything we can do to help your child be the most successful at school, that is our final goal. So if we can all work in partnership, and there's sometimes some valuable information that is done from outside agencies that is really in depth, even more than what we can provide at the school board. So for example, like I know like St. Joe's Hospital does a phenomenal job with pediatric assessments and developmental assessments. And they're extremely thorough and extremely beneficial for us in the TDSB when we go through some of those assessments. So we really appreciate and individuals like yourself that are willing to share those assessments with us in order to help guide instruction for your child. All right. I think we've addressed everything so far. So here's a little bit of a poll time. We thought we'd quiz you here. So a fact or myth? And if you want to just put your answer in the chat. So we want to ask you, is it true that all students who are on individual education plans are in special education classrooms and not in regular class? Is that true? Is that a fact or is that a myth? And I see answers coming in there. Thank you. I see people saying myths, and that's right. So no, just because your child might have an individual learning plan does not automatically mean that your child's in a special education class at all. We have lots of students who are in regular class that have individual education plans, and then we have students that are also in programs as well too. Kelly, you want to do question number 2 or fact or myth?
Sure. So IEPs, oh, lots of feedback. Sorry about that. IEPs only have academic pages included in them. Fact or myth?
And some people said already know that it was a myth. And I see Daniela and Joanne all saying that it's a myth, and Holly saying it's a myth as well too. What do you think? Drum roll, Kelly.
I would suspect that it is a myth, because a lot of times students, and it sounds like a lot of you already know a lot about IEPs, so many times there are alternative pages for students in an IEP. I mean, if there was a need for possibly like focus and attention or organization, then those are certainly developed into page 3s that are alternative page 3s. And then there are other students in our board who are in intensive support programs who are fully on alternative programming. So those IEPs would be all alternative pages. So you're correct.
Yeah, so some examples of that. So some examples might be in terms of fine motor skills. If your student is like in a developmental disability program that requires assistance like with like grips or zippering zippers or unbuttoning buttons, something like that might be part of their individual education plan. We also have, as Kelly mentioned, attention and focus or organizational skills. So one of the things that I say to parents as well as classroom teachers is and one of the things that I'd like to address is it a next step or is it an actual area of growth? Because we all have an 8-year-old in our households that often doesn't know where their hat is and doesn't know where they left their sweater and left their lunch bag at school. And that's okay, because that's an area of growth. And that's still, that's a next step, and where the child is still learning developmentally like every other 8-year-old. Whereas then I look at, is it organizational skills, where not only do they not know that, they don't know where their coat is and they went out for recess without their coat. They haven't given you the permission form for the trip that's coming up. They didn't even realize that then tomorrow there's a test for the spelling words that they were looking at. So then when we start scaffolding that and looking at that child a little bit more in depth, then we realize, oh no, this is actually more than a typical 8-year-old. Perhaps we do need to look at a page 3 for organizational skills and how we can help that child. So yeah, it is quite varied, and it should be very specific to your child and your child's needs. There was a question in the chat with regards to anxiety, and if a child has anxiety, should that be something that we are looking at doing an individual education plan? And I think that is something that needs to be scaffolded more and had more conversations about, especially now with the pandemic. We have really seen a drastic increase in terms of our students within the school board, as well as us as adults that are maybe unsure about things, or anxious about things, whereas typically maybe it wouldn't have been as heightened as it is now. So those are definitely conversations that we want to be had. And I think, there's different levels of anxiety for people, right? Like even like doing this presentation today, like Kelly and I will have butterflies in our stomach, but what are our coping strategies to then be able to present to all of you, as opposed to then, I'm going to the sink to throw up because I just can't get in front of you to present today. So those are like different levels of anxiety. So I think it's a matter of us working together to flush out what are the degrees of that and what is causing that anxiety. And as we said at the beginning of our presentation, that we're very much about universal design for learning and differentiated instruction, where then we can look at strategies to support that child. So for example, is it necessarily that, it's really hard for your child to just come to school in the mornings? We might not necessarily need an individual education plan to address those needs. Maybe we just have to look at different entry points for your child, or maybe like me as an administrator, the classroom teacher, greeting your child in the parking lot to come into the building. So we won't necessarily have to do an IEP for that. But if it's impacting their academics in terms of them not being able to get started on the test, and they will sit there for half an hour as a grade 10 student and be totally stuck and not know what to write. So those are other conversations that we would definitely have to have, of how we can scaffold to have your child be successful with the test, and definitely have those conversations. So the answer to your question is it may warrant an individual education plan if it's affecting other academics, or it may not. Okay, good question though. Okay. Now we'll go on to why does a child have an IEP? So again, with equity, anti-oppression, anti-racism, inclusion discussions, we really have to have those in place in order before any IEP is created. And this might address some of the questions with regards to like what we do for an IEP for someone who has anxiety, because we want to address some of these questions, like who is the student that is being considered and why? Why at this point is it necessary for that child to have an IEP? What accommodations can be supported for the classroom that don't require? So for example, how I mentioned about then greeting that child at the front door in the mornings if they can't come into the building. What support can the teacher be offered to better assist in the programming? And that's where people like Kelly and myself come in, where we can look at different strategies in order to support. And isn't the IEP necessary for the student to access the curriculum? Because that's our biggest piece. Are they still able to access the curriculum or not? So one of the primary responsibilities of a principal is to ensure that the parents and guardians are informed about all these interventions that are being used to assist a student who is having difficulty meeting the grade level expectations, and that there's open communication between the individual education plan that's going to be developed between you and the school. Okay. So basically, if a student is legally identified with an exceptionality, the ministry mandates that there has to be an individual education plan put into place for your child within 30 school days. So right now, if your child has started, let's say grade 7, and they have an exceptionality of a learning disability and they're in regular class, there should be an individual education plan being created and planned out for, and that will be due by October 21st, being sent home to the families. If a student is not legally identified, then it's up to the discretion of the school. So the IEP is developed with the principal in consultation with members of the school team meeting, the school support team meeting, and together we all determine that a student that has not been formally identified as exceptional really regularly requires accommodations for instructional or assessment purposes, or will be assessed on the basis of a modified or alternative expectations in order to be successful then within the classroom and also accessing the curriculum expectations. So if we feel that that they don't regularly require these accommodations for instructional or assessment purposes, we may or may not then develop an individual education plan. So that grade 9 classroom English teacher isn't going to automatically make a decision that your child needs an IEP. It is a collaboration approach that then will be discussed with everybody at an in-school team meeting. So what is the individual education plan? Like a lot of times I hear from parents that they say, oh, it's like a program that they're on, or it's a special class that they're in. But an IEP is really a written plan. And it really is for students who require accommodations, modifications for the learning expectations or the alternative curriculum, as we've mentioned. And it describes a specific special education program or services that, based on a thorough assessment of the student's strengths and areas of growth, affect the student's ability to learn and demonstrate learning. So it's basically a tool for us to help us then have the child be successful with improving their areas of growth and then ability to learn. And it's also developed in consultation with the parents, guardians, teachers, and other professional support staff. And I see that there's a chat in the question in the chat of what does it mean to be legally identified? When you're, in terms of being legally identified, what that means is that then your child has gone to an identification placement review committee meeting where then your child meets the criteria for an exceptionality, such as a learning disability, such as a physical disability, a gifted exceptionality, a developmental exceptionality. And we can talk a little bit more about that as well too, and what that looks like and means. Yeah, and definitely, Ruth, we can talk a little bit more about the gifted programming as well too once we go through this. Okay. Okay, so an IEP. An IEP is an ongoing record. It's very much fluid and constantly changing. It is monitored by the teacher, where then we look, we assess, we reevaluate, and it definitely is a flexing working document where it can constantly be changing. In fact, we do individual education plans, most of our schools, about 3 times a year. Definitely the 2 times within the progress reports into term 1 and term 2, and also semester 1 and semester 2 for secondary schools, as well as a June review. So it is something that we are always ongoing, always being revisited, always being looked at if we are achieving our goals there, and is very flexible and fluid document. And there's also an accountability tool for the students, the parents, and guardians, where everyone has a responsibility for helping the student to meet the IEP goals and expectations. An IEP is definitely not a daily lesson plan, itemizing every detail of the student's education or a description of everything that will be taught by the student. It's definitely not also an educational program, as we mentioned, or a set of expectations for all students. It's really a means for, and it's not a means to monitor how effective the teacher is being. It really is there to set and guide us as classroom teachers in terms of how we can support your child in order to have them access to curriculum. Okay, we thought we'd do a few more polls with you now. Number 3, the IEP will provide services and supports for your child beyond high school. Is that a fact or a myth? And I see a lot of you saying myth. That's correct, it is a myth. The individual education plan, we do then try to support students. Your child is able to legally stay in the Toronto District School. Oops, sorry, I think I'm muted. Can people hear me now?
Yes, we can. Sorry, I was trying to mute someone else and I accidentally slid it onto your name.
That's okay, no problem. Thank you, Danielle, for saying that you can hear us. So an individual education plan, we do try to look, so your child can legally stay in school till they're 21. I wanted to mention that. And we can do a lot of things to support your child till 21. But the IEP doesn't look at support and services beyond high school. But we do have in-school and school support team meetings where we do look at providing support for you and your family and your child, your young adult at this point, post 21 when they leave high school, in order to then what outside agencies can support and hooking you with the right people for programmings that might be beneficial. Okay. The other, Kelly, did you want to do number 4?
Sure. So all students who are formally identified with the board with an exceptionality have an individual education plan? Fact or myth? So this goes back to the regulation 181, so that when a student is formally identified through the IPRC, the development of an IEP is done 30 days after that decision has been made.
Mhm.
So it is a fact.
Yeah, it is a fact, and we have to. So for example, we have a number of students who have a gifted exceptionality within the Toronto District School Board, but then they are in regular class. Legally by the ministry, they must have an individual education plan. So what if the parents don't agree, Ruth is saying? So at an an identification placement review committee meeting, the IPRC, where then a committee recognizes two things at the committee recognizes. One, does your child meet the exceptionality? And two, what level of support does we feel as a committee would your child be best suited for? And that's where then you as a family always have the final say. So for example, if we feel that your child meets the criteria for a gifted exceptionality, and then we might be recommending a gifted intensive support program, or we might be recommending regular class, you always have a right to say that you don't feel that your child meets that criteria for exceptionality and that you don't want them to be in that program. So that is always, you have the final say there in terms of then agreeing or not agreeing with exceptionality. So if the child doesn't meet criteria, doesn't have the exceptionality, and you don't want that exceptionality, then an IEP may or may not be continued to be developed for your child. In terms of the IEP, we're always working in partnership with the family, but there are times that we might feel that the IEP might still be necessary in order for your child then to be able to access the accommodations and modifications necessary in order to access the curriculum. Okay. So should there be a page on the IEP for every subject, math, English, etc.? Okay, so this is what we're going to get into next, which is the parent consultation form. So by now, if your child is going to be on an individual education plan this school year, you should have received a parent consultation form, a collaboration form that should have gone home to you. If you haven't received that, so for example, it might be February when we have this conversation that your child might be looking at an individual education plan. And then maybe in February, you might get this parent consultation form. As well too, just because your child was on an individual education plan last year does not automatically mean that your child will be on an individual education plan this year if they are not legally identified. That would be against conversations that we're having in school team meetings. There might have been lots of growth that happened with your child over the pandemic and then being at home and learning online or pivoting back and forth from classroom, or there might not be. So there's definitely conversations that we have. So one of the things that we look at is for your input in terms of the areas of strength and in terms of the areas of growth, and what you'd like to see in terms of the learning goals, in terms of then also some of the specific subject areas. So then based upon this, and when we get this back from you as a family, then we're also going to start looking at the components of the IEP. And we're going to be looking at what are some of the relevant diagnostic assessments that have been given to us. What are some of the areas of strengths that we see as a school? What are some of the areas of growth? And then together, we're going to discuss what might be the best areas that your child might need areas of growth for. So for example, it may be for mathematics, but maybe your child is a really strong reader and writing skills are exceptional there too. So we might not need that modifications or accommodations in those areas. So it really is going to be specific to the subject areas and that classroom teacher delivering that curriculum.
And just going back to the parent consultation, sometimes the parent consultation takes the form of a meeting rather than just the parent filling in the paperwork. And on page 5 of the IEP, there's the parent log entry. And so the teacher would just make a log that a meeting took place in lieu of the parent consultation form being filled out. So there's lots of different ways that parent consultation can occur. And like Rosanna's already touched on, the consultation is throughout the year. So it's not just a one-off. It's throughout the year because the IEP is continually updated as the student progresses throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. So really this spider web kind of just goes to show that it's really all tandem and joined together, where we really look at all areas of what some of our TDSB human resources are, what your child's strengths are, where the next areas of growth are, the professional reports that are provided for us, your input as well too, and then what are the curriculum accommodations or modifications that might need to be put in place. So then as well too, it really is like a thread and it all kind of weaves together. So we are looking definitely at where are the areas of strength, where are the next areas of growth, what do we need to put in place in terms of accommodations and modifications in order for your child to be successful that are different from universal design for learning or differentiating instruction. Then how are we delivering that program then? Then we're going to constantly monitor and have conversations. We're going to look at the report card. Then we're going to look at doing, again, some more assessment data. And then we're going to look at tweaking again too. What are the strengths? Where have we made growth? Where do we still continue to need to make growth?
Okay, it's time for another poll. So the first one reads, the IEP is a flexible working document that must be reviewed and updated at least once in every reporting period. Is that a fact or a myth?
Oh, we got lots of people saying fact, Kelly.
Everyone was listening to you very well. They already knew that. One or the other. It is a fact. It is a flexible working document. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then number 6, students can have an IEP for accommodations and alternative programming only. Fact or myth?
Ooh, I think we stumped a few people because I don't see any answers coming in. Oh, Danielle said myth. Alana said myth.
Interesting.
This is fun because I feel like it's like a game show.
Yeah, it is kind of fun. I think we were trying to do it like digitally, but it wasn't working with Zoom. So anyways, it's actually a fact. There are students who are just solely on an IEP for accommodations and alternative programming. But we need to, like, I think Rosanna's already touched on this, but I'll just briefly review it, that the accommodations would be those that are actually beyond what the accommodations would be for all of the students. And then the alternative programming again would be maybe the student was diagnosed with like ADHD, and then they're just feeling that there's certain accommodations that they need to provide for that student that differ from the ones that they've been using for all of the students. And then the alternative programming might have to do with maybe it's executive functioning with respect to self-regulation or focus and attention or organizational skills. So there might be a couple of alternative programming pages in the IEP to support the student with those sort of learning skills, because the teacher might be feeling that because of the ADHD, the diagnosis is having an impact on their learning because they're struggling with organization, because they're struggling with their focus and attention in class. So that is a fact. All right, let's move on. Okay, so this is a wonderful visual because we've been talking a lot about accommodations and modifications. And I even find with educators, sometimes there is sort of a slippery slope between what an accommodation is and what a modification is. So this is a great visual just to sort of give that distinction. So on the left-hand side are accommodations. Everyone is in the same pool, but how they access it is different. The right side reflects when changes to the pool or curriculum are needed, such as changing the amount of water in a pool or a different pool is required. This would relate to the modifying curriculum within a grade level for a subject or teaching at a different grade level from their peers.
So just to elaborate that a little bit more. So for example, your student might be in grade 6 and be reading and writing at the grade 6 level. And for the entire class, we'll be reporting on 4 of the ministry expectations for reading and 4 of the ministry expectations for writing. But that might be a little too much for your child to do. So we might lessen the expectations and maybe only report on 2 or 3 of those expectations for your child, even though the rest of the class is doing all 4 of them. So that would be an example of a modification. But it could also be that your child's also in grade 4 and at a reading level though at grade 1. So then we could also pull from the grade 1 curriculum instead of the grade 4 curriculum in terms of then helping your child to be successful at reading until we can close that gap between grade 1 and grade 4. So the modifications can be happening at the specific grade level where we lessen the expectations, or they can be happening at a different grade level. In terms of social studies and science though, we would always leave it at the same grade level and just lessen the expectations because the curriculum is very different. So for example, if we're doing gears and pulleys for the grade 4 science curriculum, we're still going to keep those gears and pulleys expectations. We're not going to pull from the grade 1 expectations from science where we're talking about plants. And high schools, yes, Danielle, can be modifying credits as well too. In terms of the biggest difference between secondary and elementary though, is that in elementary, you can be transferred to the next grade or you can be promoted to the next grade. When our students reach secondary, you have to earn the credit and have the 50% of the credit. So the trick with high schools is that we can definitely be accommodating, number 1. And number 2, we can provide modifications. The modifications have to be where we're not then altering the integrity of the course, where it's no longer that course. So for example, if you're doing grade 10 Indigenous Studies, you can't be alternating the course to the point that it's no longer the Indigenous Studies curriculum that we're covering and that your child then try to earn that credit. But definitely, yes, our high schools could be modifying and accommodating for students. All right, so page 34, sorry, my slide is 34, my apologies. So this is where then we're looking at page 2 of the individual education plan, where in that top box, you'd see where all the subjects would be if we're modifying or accommodating. And then in the accommodation section where the green arrow is, this is where then you would see what the instructional accommodations may look like, what the environmental accommodations might look like, and what the assessment accommodations might look like that are going to be different for your child that aren't being done in the regular class for the rest of the students. So for example, something like manipulatives for math, you most likely will not see accommodations for manipulatives for math in this box here, because manipulatives for math will be for all students in the classroom. That's something that is under Universal Design for Learning, where it supports all of our students for learning. So it'd be something that would be very specific for your child in order for them to then be successful. Okay. And this is what the page 3 would look like of an individual education plan where we're making modifications. So if your child is only receiving accommodations for certain subject areas, then you would not see a page 3 like this. So this page 3 is where it would be for each specific subject area, whereas we would be looking at what was your child achievement last year in that specific grade and subject. So for example, social studies. And then what are we looking at the annual program goals to support your child for social studies? Then we would be pulling from the exact learning expectations from the ministry for social studies for that grade level. And what would be the teaching strategies that I as a classroom teacher would be doing differently to support your child? And what assessment methods would we be doing differently to support your child as well too? And that would be all listed there. Right now, if it's coming home, you would see it for progress report. Or you might also see it for progress report / term 1, since progress report really slides into term 1, and you would see those there. Then come for term 2, it would be updated to show term 2, and then what would be the different expectations then for term 2. So this would line up exactly then with the report card. So what are the expectations that are set here on page 3, then would line up with what I'd be as a classroom teacher assessing and reporting on for the report card under social studies, for example. Okay. All right, learning expectations. So again, I've kind of established this already with you that once we have the annual learning goals, that this is where we put the specific learning expectations, the different teaching strategies would be the next column, as we mentioned, and then the specific assessment methods. So I've kind of addressed this, even though we've kind of broke it up in the different slides here. Okay. Alternative expectations. So on alternative expectations, this is what we talked about, that if your child meets specific alternative expectations, like we mentioned before, social skills or the fine motor skills like the pencil hand coordination, self-regulation, as Kelly has alluded to with regards to attention and focus. It might be on self-advocacy skills and having your child learn to develop self-confidence and self-advocate for what his or her needs are. It also might be on alternative curriculums like functional academics, where then we're looking at some of our students with developmental disabilities, where then we're looking at functional academics. So it might be basic reading, writing, and math skills. And it could also be daily living skills for some of our students, learning to use a washing machine, learning to wash dishes, learning to take care of daily living skills as well too. That might be important there. So for all of these students, these would be in addition to the modified regular Ontario curriculum. All right, Kelly, I think I'm going to pass it on to you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Ben, by the way. Ben will be leaving because he needs to go to his next workshop.
Okay. Oh, interesting. The strategies on the left side aren't showing up. Are they showing up for you? That's
yeah,
so weird.
They're not on your screen, but they're on my other screen.
Okay.
And Kelly, I just want to say that I'm aware that we've actually gone over time.
I know. So
43, and I know that if people have to leave, by all means, we totally understand this is an adult learning model. But we hope that this has been informative and that you might want to continue to stay while we address a few more things.
Yeah, I mean, the next couple of slides I can run through they're fairly straightforward so that we can give everyone a chance if they have questions. We just developed this page. This was last year, this said in school, in person, and then virtual school, because this is the way that the board had set up things for student learning last year. Whereas this year we have the hybrid model for students who are in intensive support programs. So for those students, these are some of the strategies that the teachers are using to support some of their students who are learning at home, but are still a part of their classroom. And then you can see some of the digital assessment tools that the teachers are able to use. And actually, a bunch of staff in the special education department have developed a simultaneous learning document that is offered educators who are teaching in intensive support programs with a variety of strategies, tools, resources to utilize for their students. So this was just sort of made for that. And so you can kind of take a look at that because I know these slides have been shared. So on this page are a list of wonderful resources. I'll just begin with, I'll just do a brief description of each, but if you click on the link, then it brings you to the site. So the Learning Disabilities Association of Ontario just provides resources, online workshops, information about different types of learning disabilities. For example, a learning disability accompanied by ADHD, and just helps to reduce the stigma and raises awareness of students who have a learning disability in our schools. The Assistive Technology site provides information on assistive technology that supports specific skill deficits and also assistive technology tools for specific tasks. The Effective Practices Ministries resource is it's actually with regards to understanding autism spectrum disorder, and it offers instructional strategies, communication, social skills, and behavior management strategies. The Teach Special Education, it provides basics of processes of special education for educators by the Ontario Teachers Federation, and it includes resources, teaching, and learning strategies. The People for Education Special Education provides annual school surveys to report on how new policies affect public education, provides data on students in special education in public schools, media releases on the effectiveness of special education in schools. And then the Special Needs Roadmap is very interesting. It provides ministry links and resources that are categorized by specific areas of special needs. So this is definitely one to take a look at. It also has a list of all the acronyms that we love to use at our board. And then Connectability supports resources for students with developmental disabilities, mental health and well-being resources are in there, links to the healthcare information and resources. Education at home, online learning, provides financial supports for families with children with developmental disabilities. So please take a look at the ones that you're interested in. There's a lot of information in each of the links. So these questions were developed by parents, caregivers, guardians, to support parents when interacting with staff who develop their child's IEPs. So I don't know that I'll read through all of them, but just so that you know that they're there, to just sort of maybe pinpoint some of the maybe the questions that you have, just to you know, support the teacher with your child, and things that you may want to just uncover and discuss. It just helps with sort of focusing the discussion on the topics that you have concerns about or that you have questions about. And then again, on this page, there are links to documents. Many of these are within our board. So the Special Education Plan, which is updated every year. And it just outlines all of the different exceptionalities, the different processes, the different programs in our board. We have the inclusion strategy, inclusion delivery model by exceptionality, the parent guide to special education, the individual education plan pamphlet, which is just like a one-page pamphlet. It gives you just a sort of the gist of what we've spoken about today. The Ministry of Education, Special Education in Ontario, K-12 document, the Learning for All, and the special education acronyms again. There we go. So we just have a reflection page at the end of our presentation. So the system of special education can feel overwhelming and is quite complex, but with the right tools and information, you will manage your child's education just fine. So again, at the beginning of our presentation, Rosanna just touched on just our engagement in this presentation. And we really do thank you for your contributions to our presentation today. You've asked some very relevant and interesting questions. It can be overwhelming, as I think Rosanna touched on, just at the school support team meetings with all the professionals there and you know, all of the recommendations that are being made. So, you know, it's great that you're here today. It shows your commitment to your child, and we're here to we'll stay on if you have some questions or follow-up questions to some of the discussions that we've had today.
And Kelly, there were some questions with regards to if a parent can ask about modifications or accommodations being placed, put forth for their child. So definitely have a conversation with the classroom teacher and maybe even the Rotary teachers if your child is in older grades where there are different teachers teaching those expectations. So for example, if your child is really struggling in reading and writing in grade 7, there's probably a very good chance that they will need some type of support for social studies and science, since a lot of those two subjects are very literacy based in terms of reading and writing as well there too. So they might need that support. So definitely have those conversations with the families. Kelly, there was also a question if we were going to share the slide deck, because in order for parents to access those then links, is I'll put my email address in the chat there. That's how you can reach me. And Kelly's is the same as well too, just with a dot between her first and last name. And if you want to reach out to us with regards to the resources, we can definitely provide you with those links. And then if you have like any other questions or concerns, not just today, but throughout the school year, we're definitely happy to help you and support and address those. As Kelly and I mentioned at the beginning, we are mostly in Learning Center 1, but there is one of us at each one of your schools. So we are happy that you reach out to us and we can steer you in the right direction of who would be the person at your school to be in touch with to then, you know, help facilitate and guide some of your questions or concerns, because that's what we're really here for. We're here to support you as a family, and we're also here to support our schools in terms of us being able to then help your child be the most successful as possible. I know there was also a question with regards to Ruth. I don't know if Ruth is still on, because Ruth wanted us to talk a little bit about gifted. So we're happy, Ruth, if you want to stay on and we can talk a little bit more about gifted as well too. But we do hope that this has been really informative for you. And maybe it's you had a lot of questions coming into this, and hopefully we've addressed them. And maybe now you have even more questions, which is totally fine, because this is a process and a journey for all of us. And in the end, we're here to help your child be the most successful as possible. So what can we all do working collaboratively together to make that possible? So definitely. So thank you for taking the time this morning to be with us, and then also going over time. I'm sorry about that, but it's really important conversations. So thank you.
Thank you, Holly.
And thanks, Holly. And a few other people too. Ruth,
Thank
did you
you,
have
Elena.
specific questions with regards to gifted, or do you want to?
Joanne.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
And Samir, I just really, really want to thank you for your contributions in the chat. You made some really, really important comments that you know, Kelly and I truly believe as well too, and what our role is as classroom teachers within the Toronto District School Board or anywhere in the province of Ontario, that we should be implementing as Tier 1 strategies for all of our students, regardless of if they're on an individual education plan or not. So thank you, Samir, for your contribution. Samir, you mentioned at the beginning that you're a classroom teacher as well. Maybe he doesn't want to share that now. That's okay.
No, yes, miss. I'm a class teacher. I'm really sorry.
That's okay. What school are you at, Samir?
I was like, last week I was at Iroquois Public School. Now I got like, you know what, means I was surplus. So they moved me to the west. Luckily I got Bluedale.
Great middle school. Awesome middle school. That's great.
Right, man.
Yeah.
I was before at Henry Kelsey, but I just applied for transfer. Then they moved me there. And then finally third movement within 3 days, 3 years, like, you know what, virtual, and then this one. So,
Yeah.
so much.
Wow. And across the city, that's
Congratulations.
for sure. Well, congratulations and thank you, because you definitely have the right attitude to support all of our learners in our classrooms. So that's fantastic. That's great.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you.
Ruth was saying not specific, just general. So sorry, Ruth, what grade is your child currently in? Can I ask that, or children? Grade 8. Okay. So typically what's happening now, if you have concerns with your child perhaps being gifted, I mean, this is a huge transition year for your child. So one of the things that I would really suggest, Ruth, is that you go onto the TDSB website and also speak to the grade 8 classroom teacher in terms of transitions for secondary. And this fall, a lot of open houses are going to be starting. There might unfortunately be a lot of virtual open houses where you can look at what some of the choices are for your child. Have you had your child tested to see if they meet the gifted criteria or not? Or are you just inquiring about how it all works? Feel free to unmic as well too, Ruth, if it's easier.
There we go. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, no, she was tested in grade 3. She entered and streamed in grade 4. Has done really well. Really enjoyed it, except for a bit of there was some bullying and some mean girl stuff. But I guess I'm just her father wanted to take her out of it this year and put her into a regular stream school that was closer to his house, and I fought really hard to keep her in the program, and I'm glad that she's in it. I think it's the best thing for her. So.
Well, and especially if she's been in it since grade 4, I wouldn't have pulled her for 1 year for grade 8. I think that would have been detrimental to her mental health and well-being and social.
Right.
But for grade 9 now, okay, so what's going to happen is that in January, you're going to have what's called a level 2 identification placement review committee meeting, where the committee at the school level will look at the gifted exceptionality, which she'll continue to meet the criteria for, I'm sure. And then if you're interested in a gifted intensive support program for secondary, all gifted intensive support programs for secondary are based upon your home address. So if you go into the TDSB website and you look up Find My School, you can either use your address if that's her primary residence, or her father's address if that's his primary residence, her primary residence, to see what the homeschool would be for gifted. And then the offer of placement would be offered for gifted. And those offers would come out for February 1st. That being said, then you can accept whether you want her to go into a gifted program. In secondary, gifted is only half of their programming. So only 4 out of their 8 programs will be at the gifted level. That would be then English, math, science, and geography. So the rest of them would be open with the rest of the academic classes that every other grade 9 would be taking, like the phys ed, the art, the music, for example. That being said, in terms of the gifted program, not all of our students enter into a gifted program with the gifted exceptionality. We have many of our students that then look at regular class in their home school and just going to the regular program. And then we look at, a lot of our students look at specialty programs. And that's why I really encourage you this fall to start going to the open houses, because what happens is you can apply for 2 optional attendance programs and 2 specialty programs within the Toronto District School Board. And that's if the policies haven't changed for this September. I haven't looked at them if they haven't changed, but that's how it was last year. So for example, some of our students with the gifted exceptionalities, or without a gifted exceptionality for that matter, apply to programs like music programs or arts programs like Etobicoke School of the Arts or Rosedale Heights. Some of our students apply to like TOPS programs like at Bloor Collegiate or Mark Carnot. Some of our students apply to advanced placement programs. Some of our students apply to IB programs. Or then there's like William Lyon Mackenzie in North Toronto area that has like a MAX program, a math science program. So there's lots of different programs that then students can apply for. So it really opens it up. My husband was like, this is like applying to university. There's so many choices within TDSB, and they really are.
You just have to watch the deadlines. So they come up really quickly. So it's good that Rosanna's kind of talking to you about it now, because they do like, there's like sometimes like a, I guess, an application process for certain, like if you're doing like the advanced placement program, things like that. So because the course selection is February.
Right.
Right.
And I did-
And but a lot of them, like their exams are like this December, or
Yeah.
then they have like an audition day for like Etobicoke School of the Arts, for example, or Rosedale Heights that come in January. So I don't want you to be having the level 2 IPRC review in January and thinking that, oh, it was gifted, but oh no, she's really into the arts and wants to apply to this, and you've missed those deadline dates.
Right. But I did get something from the William Lyon Mackenzie. There is, so these things are coming out now. I'm aware of that. Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
So
that's great.
So,
Yeah.
so just very quickly, so if she's streaming into the grade 9 gifted, it's a different, slightly different, is it a little more critiqued, for lack of a better word? Like for now, 4, 5, 6, and 7 seem to be, she was just like, yeah, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Whereas now we have a little more, do you know what I mean? Going into
So
grade 9.
That's right. The biggest
Right.
difference, Ruth,
Did I
is that
understand that?
grade
Yeah.
4 to grade 8, the
Yes.
program is considered fully self-contained.
Yes.
So all the students are in the gifted program have a gifted exceptionality. Whereas
Yes.
in grade 9 on, it's
Yeah.
partial integration.
Yeah.
So for grade 9 and 10, it's 4 out of the 8 courses. In
Yeah.
grade 11 and 12, it's only 2 of their courses are at the
Oh.
gifted level. So
I didn't-
it is, whereas then in some of our other programs, specialty programs, the enrichment is different. It's
Right.
being provided in more of the subject areas. So that's why then I really encourage you to look around, ask questions. What does she want to do as well too? Should you choose for her to be in regular class or a specialty program,
Yeah.
because she has the gifted exceptionality, she
Yeah.
would still continue with the individual education plan, and
Yeah.
it would be a regular class with indirect support. So she wouldn't have the page 3s that she has now in the gifted program for the research, inquiry, and awareness of self, and other pages that she has right now.
Right. But there's some things that aren't always so good about that too, right? I mean, I don't know, that it depends on the teacher, and then the way they're signaled out, and it's can be very, and then they
Yeah.
get teased and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
And you know what, Ruth, honestly, I've had some students that have over my years gone to regular grade 9,
Yeah.
and we've removed the gifted exceptionality, and they don't want the IEP.
Yeah,
Does
exactly.
not want to be seen as gifted and different, because especially at this age group and being accepted by their peers, they just want to fit in,
It's
and
true.
they don't want to look different. So we have gone back to IPRCs where we've removed those exceptionalities
Okay.
at times.
Last quick question. So moving the criteria, or the is it that, I don't know how to phrase, is it that much more difficult to continue to stream into the grade 9 program? Is it a different, is it sort of like a given if your kid's been in it since grade 4? Is it that much? Do you know what I mean? Do they, how poorly do they have to be doing? Like, what's the criteria to carry on in the grade 9 program? Like, is there any difference in how it's been judged year to year from 4 to 8? Really? Do you know? Does that make
Well,
sense? Is
they
that-
were assessed in grade 3.
Yeah.
And they had to have been at the 98th percentile in verbal comprehension or perceptual reasoning.
And the 90 is 90?
98.
Yeah.
Where then only then would they have been given the gifted criteria.
Yes.
So as a parent, though, if you have concerns, this is always something that can be discussed at an in-school team meeting and a school support team meeting, because the psychological assessment that was done is a partial one. It's not a full one.
Yep.
So sometimes there's parents that have concerns with that. There might be also like a gifted with a learning disability, or
Mhm.
gifted with ADHD,
Yep.
or gifted with autism, for example.
Twice.
Yeah, so we definitely have those conversations that maybe we might want to look at a full psychological assessment if your child's maybe not performing the way other students are performing in that program, or you're seeing some areas of needs that are big.
Okay. Lastly, the highest score you could possibly have gotten, you say it was 98 and above, right? What could
Yes.
it have been at the most? Would it have been 100, or is it?
Yeah, I think I've seen like 99.97, for example. Yeah,
Okay.
there are definitely. So, and you understand what that means, right? Because that's a percentile, Ruth.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So like in comparison to other kids her age.
Yes, I do understand. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're very well, and reach out to us if you have any other questions or concerns throughout the school year. We're happy to support.
Sure. Okay, I'll just get your emails here. That's great. Okay, thanks a lot. Fabulous.
I hope this was helpful session for everybody.
Yeah, very much so. Mhm.
Jennifer, Laura, Lee, and then there's a phone number. I don't know if you have some other questions or concerns that we can help with.
Question. Yes, okay. My son is in the gifted program, grade 4, and he has diagnosed selective mutism. So he just started this year, and I got feedback from his music teacher. He didn't want to participate in dance. It's part of his social anxiety. And I wonder, this is just part of it. I have not heard any other complaints, concerns from other teachers. But I'm thinking, eventually, this selective mutism will hurt his marks, his grades towards the end. So is there a way I can request the school or the teachers to kind of modify the assessment for him based on his situation, so that he won't hurt, well, he won't be affected in the future, because like his communication, at that aspect, the teacher might get some not positive comments on that. Is there a way I can, what can I do? Oh, you're muted. Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to say, so he just started the gifted program, okay?
Yeah.
And so it would be really important to discuss your son at IST and SST to see if, I'm thinking the speech and language pathologist to support with some, like even a consult with the speech and language pathologist that's attached to the school to support with some strategies that the teacher can implement to support your son. Because if it's select mutism, I don't know a lot about it, but perhaps it's just something that is occurring now, but may not be something that it will affect him as much at a later time. So we need to give him time to sort of work through it. But I mean, if your son has been recommended for the gifted program, we don't want the mutism, the select mutism, to be a barrier to him being a part of that program. And so this is why we would access some of the professional services through the school support team. Anything to add to that, Rosanna?
Oh, for sure. And I think everything that you said, Kelly, is really valid, but also too, like, this is a transition piece for him. We're also talking about students who for 6 months have been at home. And also now he's switched schools and he's switched programs. So I think he needs time to adjust to the program. You might see some changes in terms of this selective mutism, maybe improving or maybe getting worse, hopefully not, because he's making a new set of friends and learning a new program and being accessing the curriculum differently. So I think I'd want to give him time and then have those conversations, as Kelly said. You could also look at social work support. That might be something that you might want to put in place for your child. And I know that there's a lot of outside agencies, such as Sick Kids, for example, that has a department for mutism, where then they can look at supports there too. So definitely start having those conversations, and he might need some accommodations at least for some certain subject areas like drama and dance, where he really does have to perform in order for the teacher to assess. So what can we do differently and have him show his learning maybe in different ways? So those conversations, you might want to set up a meeting with those specific teachers if it's not the homeroom teacher, in terms of how we can address those needs.
So because he has this situation, I could ask his dance teacher, music teacher to kind of use a different criteria to assess his performance.
Right. Have you provided the school with medical documentation about his mutism?
Yes.
Fantastic. So
we've been talking about this since he started. Yes, he moved to new school, new program.
Great. And
purpose of
maybe it's a
working.
matter of making those teachers aware of the situation and setting up meetings with them. Because maybe if I'm teaching music and dance and it's not my grade 4 homeroom, I might not even be aware that your son has selective mutism. So it's
Okay.
important that we have those conversations. I might just see him as being not answering questions or being quiet or, you know, so I want to learn more about that. So I think definitely having those conversations and then having conversations about how is the curriculum going to be delivered? And then what can we do to have my son be able to show his learning? So
Okay.
definitely have those conversations for sure.
Yeah, his teacher talked to me on the phone. I just regarding his issue. She was wondering, well, I have to assess him, so he has to do something in the dance period. Well, I don't know whether I can request her because he has this situation. Can we lower the standard for him?
Well, maybe we can look at decreasing the expectations, or
Yeah.
maybe we can look at a different way for him to show his learning. Like maybe it's some type of technology that he uses and he demonstrates that through a technology program. Maybe it's him videotaping himself in class. So we can definitely look at some different strategies and assessment purposes based upon what the teacher is doing. So definitely have those conversations for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies.
You're welcome. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.